Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Now, before we get started, just very quickly, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone that's been subscribing, liking my videos, commenting on them, asking questions, all that good stuff. It really does mean a lot to me, so thanks again, I appreciate it. And if you aren't already subscribed, well, please consider doing so. I would greatly appreciate it. As always, feel free to leave down any questions or suggestions or comments in the comment section down below. And yeah, let's jump into it. So, for today's video, I want to make it a quick one. It's more so in response to, I believe is Amit. I hope I'm saying that name correctly. But basically, this person asked a question, which was he wanted to basically have a Visualforce page that had a form, and he wanted his users to fill out that form and then click on a button to basically download that form as a PDF. And as usual, or at least as much as I tried to, I responded with what I think would be a viable solution to his issue. But I also like to create a video to kind of show that off as well. So I think that's what I'll do today. So as usual, we'll be using Visual Studio Code to write out the code and then test our implementation, all that good stuff. So first thing I want to do is I will go ahead and create a project with the manifest. And as always, I've made a few videos in the past explaining how to get this setup going on your computer. If you're interested, I'll leave a video or a link in the description box below. But anyways, I'll go ahead and create a project with the manifest. And for this one, we'll just call this download, or actually rather, it's asking us for a what type of template. We'll use a standard template. And now I will give it a name. I'll just call this download PDF. Fine. And I'll just dump it into this folder. Fine. And I don't need to save this. Okay, so here after our command ran, it looks like it tried to refresh our S object definitions, and this is really isn't this important to our video today, but I do want to make sure that this error is taken care of. It looks like it can't query the org because it's not connected. So let me go ahead and connect to my org. And again, I've done all this before. I've shown this in many different videos. So feel free to watch that video if you're wanting to follow along or implement this on your own. But I already have a connection to a Trailhead org that I created a while ago. So I'll go ahead and just connect to that. Once it's connected, we are now able to start writing some code. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is essentially, or actually let me back up. The way we're going to implement this, and again, his issue was that he has a Visualforce page with a form that users will fill out. Once that form is filled out, he wants to have, or he or she wants to have a way of allowing the user to download that form as a PDF. So the way in which I kind of accomplish this is we're going to have essentially two different Visualforce pages and one Apex class as a controller. The first Visualforce page will act simply as the form, and the second Visualforce page will act strictly as a way of generating that PDF. And the controller will be shared amongst both of those Visualforce pages. The controller it's only responsible for creating a new page reference to this new PDF page that we want to generate. So let's go ahead and start doing that. To start with, I'll go ahead and create the Apex class. And for this one, we will call it PDF generator. And I'll just dump it in the default directory. That's fine. And let's go ahead and also create the Visualforce pages. So create Visualforce page, and this one we will call it, I don't know, sample form, I guess. Don't really have any specific names I want to use. And then lastly, we'll go ahead and create one more Visualforce page, and this will be the sample form PDF. Okay, so once we have all of those forms, let me go ahead and make sure that they're all opened so we can kind of just jump between them very easily. And here we go. Okay, so we have our Apex class, our sample form, and our sample form PDF. So what I think I will do just to kind of save time is I'm going to go ahead and kind of like just copy and paste some very basic form for our Visualforce page. So let me go ahead and do that very quickly. I'll go ahead and replace this right here. And as you can see, essentially what I did is I created an Apex form. I have some kind of like formatting tags such as a page block and a page block button. The page block button, it just has the value of download PDF, as well as a reference to this method that doesn't yet exist because we don't have a controller defined yet. But anyways, so you can see here, we have inside of 3 different page block section items, we have an input text. We're not going to use input fields right now, mostly because I just wanted to keep it as simple as possible. And in reality, if we're trying to utilize information in our org, like whether it's like an object or a record or anything, the process should pretty much be the same thing. So just to kind of keep the complexity low, I will just be using input text. But anyway, so yeah, this form is pretty simple, I think. The only thing we really need to do now is just define our controller, and that is the PDF generator, if I spelled that correctly. So I'll go ahead and hit save on that. And let's go ahead and define this download PDF method right here. So inside of our PDF generator, we have the constructor, which we're not going to utilize, so we can kind of just ignore that. And what we want to do is, well, we want to start by defining those values that are referenced in our input text right here. So I have name, phone, and message. So let me go ahead and define just a couple of public strings for that. So actually, it doesn't even have to be public, but that's fine. I'll keep it as public. I will make sure that the getters and setters are set. So we'll do name, phone with the getter and setter. And lastly, we will do a message. So getter and setter. And this basically just ensures that we have the connection of our variables from our backend, which is the apex, to our front end, which are these values right here. So once we have all that, lastly, what really we need to do is we need to define that method. And the method, it's going to return a page reference. And the name we chose earlier was download PDF, like that. Again, download PDF, that is just the name I already had for this action right here in this button. And essentially in here, we're only doing a couple things. Well, one of the things we want to do is like I said, we want to create a new page reference to this Visualforce page, which will be a PDF at one point. And I guess we can start by kind of setting that up a little bit. So the controller for this will be the exact same controller that we were using for sample form, which is the PDF generator. And I'll kind of get into why in a second. And in here, pretty much what we want to do is, well, the PDF generator or the sample form PDF Visualforce page, it can pretty much be, almost an exact copy of your actual Visualforce page, which has the form, or it could be formatted differently. But at the very least, if you want to have like the exact same, form you use for your Visualforce page, and you don't really want to change anything, there is one thing you have to do that's a bit different. And essentially what that is changing these input texts to output text or output fields if you're using input fields. If you kind of just copy this code that we have here for our form into our actual PDF Visualforce page, it won't work. You'll get a blank PDF output. So having said that, I will kind of go ahead and copy and paste code that I already written beforehand right here. And like I said, the code is pretty much the same, with the exception that now they're output text instead of input text. And that ensures that the PDF is not a blank page. So I'll go ahead and save that here. And lastly, pretty much the last thing we need to do is have the render as attribute, and we want to render this as a PDF. So that's pretty much all we need for our actual PDF Visualforce page. Moving back, let's go into the download PDF method, which is kind of in charge of like putting all this good stuff together. And in here, what we want to do is a few things. We want to build up a string that will kind of act as like a parameter set for our URL for our page reference. So let me go ahead and define a string, and we'll call this params. And actually, before I do that, let me go ahead and copy this uppercase string and paste it here. Just a small thing that's going to bother me if I don't do it. I like to have my variable types capitalized. But anyways, so string params, and when I say params, I'm talking about like the URL query parameters. Essentially, what I'm going to do is just concatenate all those together. So it'll be like something like this. the name equals the name, the phone equals the phone, so on and so forth. The next thing you want to do is let's go ahead and create that page URL. And here, I'm going to go ahead and hard code this because I already know the name of our Visualforce page, which is this one right here, the sample form PDF. So the way we access that is by doing /apex/sample form PDF. And then I'm going to have this little question mark, which signifies that we have some parameters. And I will just go ahead and add the params like so. So, and like how I usually like to explain in pretty much every video I do, none of this is production grade code. This is just a very simple demo to kind of show you guys how to do stuff. So yeah, I'm not an expert programmer, and nor would I push this type of code into production without first making sure there's a bunch of checks and balances in place. But anyways, just a little disclaimer that I like to give. So once we have that, let's go ahead and create our actual page or reference. So page reference, I'll just call this the download PDF page, I guess. I'm not really sure. But we're going to create a new page reference. And in here, we're going to pass that page URL. And this pretty much signifies that we have a page reference to this Visualforce page right here. Okay, so the last thing we need to do, or one of the last things we need to do is for this download page, download PDF page reference, we want to add a header. So I will do get header, which is a map, but I'm going to put something into that map. So I'm kind of just skipping a couple steps. Get headers, I believe, returns a map, but I actually don't want to grab it, or I do want to grab it, but I don't care about storing it. All I care about is grabbing it so I can put something in it. And the thing we're going to put in it is the following. I'll go ahead and copy this because I'm too lazy to type it out. But essentially, we're going to put this map key value pair. The key is content disposition, and the value is attachment with the file name of this right here. So I will just kind of just leave this hard coded. But if you could bring that out into a variable, and then kind of like what I did for params. This is a mistake right here. Let me fix that. Kind of like how I did for params, you can make it a bit more dynamic, change the PDF name to something else that you want. For our purposes, I'll just call this the download PDF page. That should be fine. But essentially what this is, and this is not specific to Salesforce, this is kind of like a web HTTP thing. This is what you would typically see if you were doing a request to like a page using HTTP, that you want to send some information or grab some information, and it's going to be as an attachment and then with this specific file name. And basically, long story short, when a browser sees that you're receiving some information via a request, with this header, it should know to download that attachment instead of trying to open it or do something else with it. So I hope that makes sense. I'm trying to rush through this video because I'm kind of tired and want to go to sleep. But anyways, so once we add this header, last thing we need to do is we just need to return that page reference, and we should be good to go. So again, one more time, just to kind of wrap things together, we have our Visualforce page, which acts strictly as an input form page. Then we have another Visualforce page, which gets rendered as a PDF that will display that information that was inputted from the first Visualforce page. And to kind of tie it in together, in this first Visualforce page, we have a command button that when clicked calls the download PDF method, which is this right here. The download PDF method is responsible for basically creating the page reference with this information. We're passing in the name, the phone, the message, all that good stuff, as well as adding another header to that page reference, and then just returning it back. So just to kind of wrap this up, the reason why the controller is the exact same for both pages is essentially because we want to use the exact same context for it. So I hope that kind of makes sense. Okay, so if we didn't make any mistakes, all of this code should kind of work once we deploy it to our org. So to do so, I will first go ahead and deploy this Apex class. So let me go ahead and run that command for it. So we will do deploy source to org. Hopefully that works the first time. And yep, so that works. Next up, we'll do the sample form page, deploy source to org. And lastly, we will do the sample form actual PDF page. Okay. So once that is done, we should be good to go. Now, the way this will work is we access this sample form page, which contains the input. So let's go ahead and actually access that. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and copy this because I'm kind of lazy. And we'll jump into our org, which is right here. I will go ahead and do a little bit of URL hacking and change it to that, just so we can access our Visualforce page. And it looks like we made a mistake because it's opening up the Visualforce page as a PDF. So let's see what we did wrong. Oh, and that's my mistake. I copied the whole thing. I meant to just copy sample form. Again, kind of tired. So let's go ahead and fix that. It's sample form, not sample form PDF. That's the other one that we get. So this is our input form, Visualforce page. Pretty simple. I know the whole point of this was not to go over styling or structuring of a Visualforce page. It's just to show how this thing actually works. So I'll go ahead and put a name here. Let's put Joe. The phone number will be 555, which is, I guess, just a bunch of fives. And the message will be like, hello world, or something like that. Now we'll click on download PDF, and you'll see that when I clicked on it, at the bottom of the page, we have this download PDF page right here that actually got generated and downloaded automatically to my computer. So let's go ahead and click on this, and you'll see that it opens up now as a PDF because that's the file format. In my case, it auto downloaded to my downloads folder. I kind of have that set to automatic, so it didn't ask me where to place it to. But as you can see here, this is an actual PDF page right here. Contains the inputs that we inputted into our Visualforce page, except now it's a PDF. Hello guys, before we go any further, I just realized that I made I guess a couple of mistakes as I'm editing this video. So let's go ahead and kind of cover those before we wrap things up. So in our code, and this is completely my fault again because I'm kind of falling asleep. I didn't realize I was actually looking at multiple snippets of code, some from my previous attempts at making this work, and I realized I kind of glanced at a wrong piece of code. We actually don't need this page, this params to be passed into the URL. And if you caught this, I mean, kudos to you. But essentially, what we saw here is in order for params to actually work in URLs, you have to have like the key equals the value, right? Well, for message, we forgot to put the equal sign here. So there was no possible way, if this was the way it's supposed to work, that the PDF could have picked up, what the message was. And if we look at the actual PDF that got generated, let me bring that up very quickly. We'll see here that the message did indeed get pushed through, right? Which doesn't make sense. Like, if we were using this param stuff, it shouldn't be there. But furthermore, that's not even the problem. The issue is we actually don't need this in the first place because, like how I mentioned way earlier in the video, these Visualforce pages are using the exact same controller, which means they should be using the exact same context. So it doesn't really make sense that this should be used. If this was to be used, then you would have some way in your constructor of getting those params out and then repopulating these fields. But again, I hope what I'm saying makes sense. Essentially, this is kind of just like wasted code. It's not being used for anything. Like, yeah, sure, we're passing the parameters, but like we're staying in the exact same controller with the exact same context. We're not doing anything with it. The constructor doesn't rerun as far as I know because it's the exact same controller context. So essentially what I'm saying is you can get rid of the params here and get rid of this, get rid of the query, the denoter little symbol right there. And we can just save this here. And just to kind of prove that this does work, let's go ahead and I guess we'll push this to our org, deploy source to org. And once that is done, let's go ahead and basically retry it. But yeah, I hope this makes sense, that what I'm saying is not confusing you guys any further. Essentially, we don't need to pass any parameters into anything because we're using one controller for two different pages that have the exact same context. We're not really changing anything. And I'll go ahead and refresh the page right here. Again, this time I'll send Joe 1, hello world 1, and 555 with the 1 at the end. We'll click on download PDF. We still get our little generator PDF thing at the bottom. I'll open it and we'll see here that, we still get the expected output. So yeah, just wanted to kind of quickly correct that issue, that error. I don't want you guys to write wrong code and it'd be my fault. So anyways, back to the video. So yeah, I hope this kind of helps. Obviously, it's a very simplified overview of it, but I think this should be enough to get you rolling, or anybody that needs to do this. This should be good enough, I think. But yeah, if you have any questions or comments or suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comment section down below. And as always, I always try to respond to as many questions as possible. Sometimes, if what you're asking is a bit more complex or more nuanced, I will probably just make a video to help you out as much as possible. I am still kind of working on establishing a more, I guess, consistent a video upload schedule, but I'm kind of still working on that. I'll let you guys know when I have that figured out. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.